I think one of the biggest questions is because we've seen Canelo Alvarez fight in his last two fights. John Ryder went the distance, and then Jermell Charlo, he went the distance with Mel as well. I thought he was possibly going to get the stoppage against Mel. That didn't happen. I thought he was going to get the stoppage against John Ryder. That didn't happen. Of course, we know that Jaime Munguia stopped John Ryder. So I think one of the biggest questions coming into this fight is what happens next if Canelo Alvarez beats Jaime Munguia?
You know, the knockout point. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there was a point in Manny Pacquiao's career, and I've referenced this on the show before, where like he just stopped knocking dudes out, and that was kind of it. Like he was just winning by decision over and over and over again, and it was probably to the point where he came up in the very very lighter weight classes, moved up all the way to welterweight, super welterweight at one point, but welterweight toward the end of his career is predominantly where he was. And he wasn't knocking guys out. I don't know if that was a weight class thing, an age thing, or just at some point, they say your power is the last thing to go, but finishing ability wasn't quite there. And we're talking about decisions against guys like, no disrespect, Chris Algieri, Jesse Vargas, guys you would have projected to finish. Like if you look at probably the odds for what they were back then, maybe you would have thought he could have finished those dudes. Adrian Broner is another one. I remember people thinking that he would knock out Adrian Broner. Lucas Matisse was Manny Pacquiao's only knockout after 2009, and he boxed all the way to 2021. So is Canelo Alvarez at that stage in his career? I believe his last knockout was Caleb Plant, which is in late 2021.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too far ago, but it definitely was. Like it was a little while ago. I believe that was his last stoppage. Yes.
But I don't think you're going to find another stretch in his career where you're talking about 5 fights he has no knockouts in a row, right? Like so it's like if you look at it, and by the way, this is going to be the 65th fight of his career. So like this is not a young it's not a young fighter either. Who turned pro in 2005. He's approaching 20 years in the game as a professional. Caleb Plant was the last knockout in November of 2021. And since then, Bivol, Golovkin, Ryder, Charlo, this will be the 5th fight. And we'll see what happens. So ultimately, I think what's next is just, again, this is Canelo. So whatever he wants, assuming he wins this fight and assuming there's no controversy, he does it either in a landslide or by knockout. I don't know whatever he wants is, though. I would like it to be David Benavidez, but it doesn't appear that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I don't think the David Benavidez fight is going to happen. If he gets past Jaime Munguia, which I do believe is a pretty tough test for Canelo, and we will be breaking that all down, I think he might fight Edgar Berlanga. I don't know if Edgar is ready for a Canelo Alvarez, but I think that might be a fight that Canelo might want to take. Canelo's at the stage in his career, well, he's been for a while, that he can do whatever he likes. I think the most important thing for him is to have a really good finish. A lot of people talk about that John Ryder fight. Canelo was coming off of a wrist surgery. Like his hand wasn't the same, right? So I don't believe he was 100%. And the craziest part is, did we even know that Canelo's hand was bothering him before that fight? Because he stops Caleb Plant. He loses to Dimitri Bivol. After the Dimitri Bivol loss, a lot of people were counting Canelo out. Let's remember that that's not his natural weight class. Like we thought that he was going to be, this 4-division champ, run through different divisions. At one point, we were talking about him, going up against Artur Beterbiev, right? We kept on putting Canelo in different weight classes and thinking he was going to run through them because that's what he was doing. And I think for him, he wants to have a good performance for himself, but I think he's confident and everything, just because I don't know if Canelo's been 100% this whole entire time. Like having a wrist surgery, a lot of it's mental, right? Because you don't know how strong your hand is. Canelo says his hand is fine. But I don't think that we saw the Canelo Alvarez that we're used to seeing in that John Ryder fight. I thought he was going to stop John Ryder. John Ryder's face was crazy in that fight.
Yep.
Tough ass dude. But styles make fight. Yeah, styles make fights though. And that's the most important thing for this. I think Canelo can do whatever he wants. But listen, if he knocks out Jaime Munguia, why not see him fight Edgar Berlanga after? And everyone loves the Mexico-Puerto Rico rivalry, right? Is Edgar Berlanga ready? I mean, I don't think he is. However, that's going to bring in a lot of dollars because hate it or love it, if you like Edgar or not, he's one of the few people in boxing that have already been seen as a superstar, essentially, right? He went on that knockout run. You got rappers and stuff coming to his fights and supporting him. He has a lot of the New York crowd supporting him as well. So I think that's what Canelo would look to do next. And that's what's been rumored, right? At one point, it was like, is he going to fight Jaime or is he going to fight Edgar Berlanga? So I think he's going to just line him up and just go that way. So that's what I think. Do you have any final thoughts before I move over to the Jaime Munguia piece?
Edgar Berlanga is supposed to be the mandatory challenger for Canelo Alvarez after this. Remember that was reported out there, like he might become the mandatory. And it's funny because we were saying that the last fights between Patrick McCrory and Edgar Berlanga, and also Jaime Munguia versus John Ryder, the two winners should face each other for the right to face Canelo Alvarez. Well, it looks like Canelo Alvarez is probably going to fight both anyway.
Yes.
And it would make a lot of sense. Like if you're not going to fight David Benavidez, like if he fights Edgar Berlanga in September, I think all of us will kind of be like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. He'll probably win that fight, but business-wise, it makes sense. Edgar Berlanga does have power that should concern Canelo Alvarez, but could he land on him effectively? It's kind of similar to the Jaime Munguia fight that we're talking about, where stylistically you break it down, like some of the same issues that Edgar Berlanga has, Jaime Munguia has, which is why I thought they should have fought each other. Maybe they could if they both lose to Canelo Alvarez anyway.
I do want to say though, and this is not me being biased because everyone knows if you watch the show, I love Mexican fighters. I do think Jaime Munguia is a lot more polished than Edgar Berlanga. He's got more fights on his belt, and I think he's more polished.
I think he's more polished, but I do want to see if Edgar Berlanga's last performance was that just like his best performance and it just being a one-off, or is that like what he's going to do now? And some people don't even think that was a great performance, but I think like, listen,
I thought it was great.
That's real progress from where he was. Like that's real progress from what he was doing since the knockout streak ended. As it pertains to that beating Canelo Alvarez, I don't know. The only guy who I really feel confident in beating Canelo Alvarez right now, other than Dimitri Bivol, who already did it, is David Benavidez. Is the only other one where I'm and that's not even like like a layup. Like Canelo, if he beats Benavidez in a future fight, I don't think people will be that shocked. I combined both words two different ways there, professional broadcaster. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
I do want to say before we move on, if he gets past Jaime Munguia and then if he gets past Edgar Berlanga, if that fight happens, Bryan mentioned he's a mandatory. Does he finally fight Maul? Does that fight finally happen? Does he just avoid Benavidez altogether? Because Benavidez moved up, right? He already knows this fight's not going to happen. And if we're talking about Canelo's legacy, he's only got 2 losses on there, Dimitri Bivol and Mayweather. Those are not too bad losses to have. And I don't want to see the Bivol rematch. Yeah, I mean, listen, I listen. I think that first Triple G fight. I thought Triple G won that fight. I thought the second one was a draw, and then he destroyed Triple G.
The Araceli Lara one's also a hotly debated one. But he has 2 losses on record. Look, let's go to a couple comments here before we get to the potential upset portion of this, because I think that's worth talking about, because we didn't do it that much for the Ryan Garcia fight because we all expected Devin Haney would win that fight, and he should have, and he still almost did, except he didn't because Ryan Garcia kind of whooped his ass and I think broke his jaw. Ryan Garcia has been wilding before and is wilding ever since, but that's another story for another day.